Hello, everybody. How's everyone tonight? Feeling very summery? Yes? Yes? Just so you know, the lovely location of the day is, it looks like, I think we're pretty much in Grenada. So it's a sneak preview. Right on the water, got a tiki hut, got some palm trees. Everyone enjoying the palm trees? We're good? So welcome to Grenada. That's where we're located. I think it's always good for you guys to know exactly where we are. I gave you each, technically I didn't give you each. Terry gave you each a slip of blue paper. It's in front of you. We're going to, in the second half of tonight, I'll pull out questions that you have that you want addressed. It could be something personal or something global or something curiosity oriented. So during the first half, you don't have to write your question down right now. During the first half, just write down a question and I'll collect the pieces of paper when we take a break, and then I'll pull them out in the second half. That way everybody gets an equal opportunity to have your question pulled. Okay? Everybody understand? So if something pops up and I don't necessarily answer it while we're speaking, then, jot that question down if it's a curiosity from something we were talking about tonight. And I know that that's a part of what is the value in what I can provide to you is to be able to answer your questions. So since you have the conduit here live in front of you, you might as well take advantage of it very, very literally by asking a question. Sometimes I think of it as like, do you remember in Big, there was that machine, what was it? Zoltar. Okay, so sometimes that's all I am, like Zoltar, okay? So except it's going to be good fortune and they make a lot of sense. So, and you don't have to put any money in me either, which makes it really good because that would be awkward. Yeah, so that would be really uncomfortable for all of us. My mind's going in places I'm going to have to just pull it back in really, really quickly so I don't go into those other places. Yeah, like when sometimes if I was doing an event and I was selling something that was like $18, I'd wind up going home at night with like a lot of big wad of singles, and they're on my desk and my kid will come in and she's like, Mom? Where were you last night? I know you said you were working.
You're at least $5.
Thank you. Luckily, I booted that answer up really quickly, and said, if that's what I was doing, these would be fives and 20s instead of singles. I hope they wouldn't be singles. All right, we're here for a different purpose than this, so let's get to that purpose instead.
Comedy's not really your thing.
Apparently not. Okay, this is the 7th month of the year. It's hard to believe the year is more than half over. And that means we're on our 7th building block of the year. The building blocks are the foundations for having a life filled with all of the things that it is that you want. And I still am living within the same context that guides have given me at the end of last year, in that this year it's a segue year. It's not that this year is not significant and it's not important, but it is a very important bridge year, taking us from all the stuff that we've been amping up for the last decade, the last 2 years, last 5 years, all of this newfound energy that's coming in of enlightenment and, striving to become more of a soul and less of an ego. So this year is really, it's a synthesis year and a bridge year into the gateway of 2020. 2020 is a metaphor for clear vision. So we will have the opportunity for even more clarity, more insights, more understanding of our journey and the journey of others. And as we walk through that gateway into this new era, we're going to be well prepared because this bridge year is giving us those tools to just remind us of the essential things to pack with us and bring us into the new year. And I said that by July, I'm not going to be going in detail over what the previous months were. because I have been doing that every month because I believe that reinforcement is very, very helpful. And it's not always easy to remember some of those tools and some of those strategies when you need them most. They sound terrific when you're here and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then you jot it down in your notebook, but then you're in that circumstance when that's exactly what it is that you need, but no one's pulling out your notebook for you saying, don't forget, turn to page 17. There's a really good suggestion on that page. Reinforcement and then learning how to practice it in your day-to-day experience is what provides the shift so that the foundational tools can allow you to keep building. But I have them printed out for me what the first 6 were because it's easier than me remembering them at this point, all 7 months in, right? I can remember 3 things and that's it. After that, I'm out. But let me see if I glance at it, if there's anything in particular you guys want to shine the light on of any of those foundational tools that we've talked about so far this year. And you know what? Of course, we're going to go to this one. This one I've been talking about since 2012. And I really hope to stop having to talk about it so much after 2020. But, you know, if I have to, I have to. And that's fine with me. I can't stand not seeing your pretty face. Yeah, I could tell. Is that better? Okay. Is that better? Yeah? Okay. The one that I turn to immediately, which would be where your guides direct you, is the one about fear, once again. I'll reinforce this until we learn to continue to move away from it in a more profound way, is that fear is the new hate. It's a vibration that is in the opposite vibration of the vibration of love. When you separate from the vibration of love, which is being connected in a state of knowingness, feeling joy, feeling confident, feeling powerful, feeling abundant, knowing yourself on an eternal basis, not just a human basis. When you are connected to that vibration, anytime you dial that down, the experience feels like, hey, hi, I haven't seen you in a while, way back there. How are you? Good to see you. I didn't give you a hug. Hello.
That was part of the experience.
No, hi. I just noticed. I think I tried to give everyone, you know, I think I tried to hug everybody here. I think I tried to. So when you dial that down, the more you dial it down, the more you separate from your inner wisdom, and the two experiences having the absence of love, the absence of soulfulness, are fear and hate. So fear and hate don't necessarily, hello, how are you? Fear and hate don't necessarily have their own energy. That's just what it feels like when we are dialing down the truth of who we are eternally and the purpose of life and how magnificent we are. When you dial that down, it feels like fear and it feels like hate. You know, it's really interesting. Did you ever kind of get caught up on something that you hear and you start to pay a lot of attention to it because now all of a sudden it becomes the thing to become afraid of? And like a day or so later, you're being mindful of something you eat or something that you smell or some place that you visit. What we are in right now is we are in a bombardment of fear-based suggestions. You really literally could spend from the minute you get out of bed until the minute you go to bed at night, listening to other people's suggestions of things to be afraid of, okay? When you're in a parking lot, when you eat beef, when you cross the street, when you ride your bicycle, when you breathe air, when you ride the train, it just doesn't end. It just doesn't end. And so what we wind up doing is we live in a state of perpetual preparedness, waiting for something to go wrong, waiting for harm to come to us. And when you are living in that state of perpetual fear, waiting for something to happen, you're having a conversation with the cells of your body that are not aligning them with the vibrancy of good health, with the vibrancy of anti-aging properties. So not only is fear uncomfortable, but it actually just changes your entire physiology, okay? One of the most fascinating things is if you look at the physiology of the animal kingdom, animals also have fear, but fear is a response to a real threat. If there's a threat to their environment, their safety, their young, their food supply, if there's an actual threat, they will respond with fight or flight. We're all familiar with the fight or flight response, okay? We have that. It works. We have it. The challenge is that we have, as a society, ignited so many things that we think are perceived threats that we're putting ourselves physiologically into the fight or flight state on a regular basis, on a daily basis. You know, the body's not prepared for that. The body doesn't have the mechanism to dissipate that and to get that back off us. What's natural for us is to be at peace. It's natural for us to be healthy, natural for us to feel optimistic, to feel safe, to feel abundant, and to feel free. So when you are allowing fear to become the lens that you perceive your own reality in, you are changing not only the joy that you have in that minute, but you're also changing your relationship with your body and your well-being, okay? And this is just the physiology of it. This isn't even talking about the effect that it has on your emotions and what it is that you store. Every time we store something that we perceive as being uncomfortable, we're adding another trigger for a reason to be uncomfortable in the future, okay? So, wow, I certainly did add something to that we didn't talk about when this month came up about moving away from fear. I will just continue to give you new insights into the artificial, arbitrary, and unnecessary element of fear so that you can be one that opts out. You can be one that turns the conversation away when people are talking about something to be afraid of. I always say that I'm impervious to harm. And for the most part, I really believe that I'm impervious to harm. And I find myself, and I'm pretty okay with it, I'll be in the part of town that you're not supposed to go in, right? Well, I'm in that part of town, and and 2 blocks over where it's a different part of town. That's where my Airbnb is. So I'm alone. It's 10 o'clock at night because I just arrived and I need some food for the refrigerator. So I'm walking in these alleyways. I'm moving past graffiti. I'm walking past things people would be like, you don't want to do that. You shouldn't do that. What are you doing? You're crazy. It's insane. You're going to get yourself killed. And while I'm doing this, I'm just like happy. I am happy. And I can almost imagine stepping back into what it used to be like to be strictly human, and how I would pull myself away from that circumstance and I would go lock myself onto the other side of town, which is 3 blocks away. But I don't want to make my world small. I want to experience everything that I can experience. So in the end, I find a little grocery store, and it's a real mixed kind of collection of people who are grocery shopping at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. A lot of hard working people that just got off work. I wound up meeting people. I wound up having really cool conversations with people. I walked my bags back home to my Airbnb, and everything about it felt wonderful, And that's how I choose to live. And because I've gone through so much effort to change the vibration of what I emit and who I am, I know that no harm will come to me in these circumstances. So I get to roll my sleeves up and live the way that I want to live and the way that I choose to live. It's so interesting. If we all do this, if we all just keep working on these building blocks and scraping away the misinformation that we've been taught along the way, everything that's disharmonious on this entire planet will dissolve. Like, you realize that. There's going to be a lot of unemployed people, a lot, because we will not need hospitals. We will not need a $1 trillion defense budget. We will not need a police force. We will not need a military. All of those people will become unemployed, and maybe we can hang out and have chickens and play the drums around a fire or something and eat off the earth. I'll be cool with that. But what creates disharmony is the separation from our innate sense that we are whole, we are happy, we are healthy, and the world is a safe and wonderful place to be and to live. Okay? Good. Yeah. I had one of the cutest experiences. There was a young woman here a couple of years ago. She would come regularly, and one day we were working on the idea of fear, but we were talking about harmony in the body. And I've talked often about how I went from being an unhealthy person to being a healthy person, and now that really is my only choice, is to be healthy. Any body disharmony is pretty temporary and has a significant and easy to understand purpose for me. So I'm able to realign where I want to be very, very, very quickly. And I strived for that. It didn't happen overnight. It was the thing I dedicated myself to when I began to be able to communicate with guides. So this one night we're all here, and you'll know if you were here that night, but I explained how I opted out of illness. So I sent a sheet out, and it said, "Dear universe, I opt out of illness." Okay. So I sent it around. Like, if you don't want to sign it, you don't have to, but if you're ready, just sign it and pass it on to the next person, because it is a declaration that you're opting into vibrant and wonderful health. So I passed it around. Everyone signed, which was pretty cool. So flash forward, I get a note, somebody wants a session. There was one young girl that had signed it, and she opted out of illness. And she said, "Listen, I wanted a session for a few reasons, but one of the reasons is that I've had a cold for about 2 weeks, and I haven't been sick since I opted out of illness 2 years ago, and I want to know what's wrong." I thought, oh, it didn't make me happy that she felt like something was wrong, that she had a cold, but it made me so happy that she literally got to opt herself out of illness for 2 solid years, But what it shows us is this whole thing that we're doing here. It's just an illusion. So why don't you make the illusion be what you want it to be, instead of what other people are all bitching and moaning about? Make it your illusion. Make it what you want to live, right? Okay, good. All right, we talked about fear. Okay, the other thing to remember is back in the, I love looking at like the 60s on, because the 1960s were really the kickoff for 2020. It really started the energy. And I could give an entire seminar from 1960s through 2019. And it would be a fascinating look at the vibrational energy of our increased or accelerated rate of enlightenment, and where it's bringing us and where it will bring us. It's very, very interesting when you apply the details of those different decades. But one of the things that did happen was the 1980s. If we were to just kind of look at an adjective list of what the decades were, a brief adjective list from the 1980s was that it was a decade in which people were turning toward themselves and seeing me for the first time. Okay, so it was a me decade. But one of the things in being a me decade was, one of the ancillary byproducts of that was that it also became a very, very, very litigious decade. It became a decade in which people were saying, "Me, you hurt me, you hurt me, you hurt me. I tripped on your sidewalk. I don't like the way you cut my hair. You didn't show up for work." We became very angry when we felt that there was any harm, whether it was imaginary or real. We started to get very angry. So we sued everybody for everything, right? We sued and we sued and we sued. And the only one that benefited in the long run were the attorneys. And there are a lot of attorneys out there right now that are still benefiting from the 1980s. Because when we started to sue, we had to regulate, to protect, to protect your safety, to protect our company, to protect our stockholders, to protect our reputation, to protect everything. This is the decade that we started pulling down children's playgrounds. This is the decade when you started to have to sign a waiver that was 3 pages long if you were to do a ropes course, right? This is the decade when the fun of life started to really get dialed down, and you had to think about everything. You got to wear knee pads if you're going to go in my business. You have to do this, the warning labels on our hot coffee, everything. You can't pull your visors down without those airbag warnings. It's fear, but the litigiousness coupled with fear is what made us live in this environment, right? I don't know what you pay for a car, but let's just throw it out there. $50,000. Say you buy a car, $50,000. You spent $50,000 on your car, right? When you pull your visors down, can you remove the big yellow airbag warning signs in your car? No, you can't. That's where we live, and we accept it. We just keep accepting it. We keep accepting it. And one of the other byproducts of this, the consequence of it, is that malpractice insurance went through the roof. If you live in a litigious society, malpractice insurance is going to go through the roof. So what do you do to prevent being sued for malpractice so your rates don't go up? If one person needs 1 test, you send them for 5. So what are you doing? Now they think they need 5 tests, and then you sit and you wait and you take the test and it sucks and you can't eat and you're waiting for the phone call and this technician reads it and she's like, no, nothing to see here. Your doctor will have an appointment with you. And this is how we live, all because the 1980s said, you owe me. You owe me, you owe me, you owe me, all right? So last night I was at the beach. You guys know what I'm saying, right? So 7 o'clock, everybody out of the water, everybody out of the water, everybody out of the water. So they go and everybody gets out of the water. And then for the first time ever, I'm at the beach at 7 o'clock at night, as often as I can be, which isn't often enough. But for the first time ever, after the lifeguards pulled everybody back in, which I'm accustomed to, and I usually wait 1 minute and 30 seconds before I go back in the water. But last night, 10 minutes later, EMS person comes driving on a beach buggy, and for 20 minutes goes up and down the beach, out of the water, out of the water, out of the water, out of the water. And I'm like, I know this is a small issue, but who owns this ocean? EMS person? Who owns this ocean? Who owns this ocean? Whose wave is that? This wave is not your wave. This ocean is not your ocean. This land does not belong to the government. This is our world. This is our globe. This is our environment. We've chopped it up. We've ruled the hell out of it. We've made so much about don't do, don't do, don't do, to the point that we made people afraid. So finally, EMS person can only be facing in one direction, right? So when EMS person goes that way, I go in the water. When EMS person comes back, I step out of the water. Finally, after about 12 minutes of that, EMS person went up that way and got rid of the beach buggy, and so I was able to go back in the water. But you know, I was told no more, the beach is closed, no more swimming, don't go in the water. There's nothing that's going to make me go in that water more than telling me this ocean is off limits. There could have been a herd, school, group, goggle, giggle, gaggle of sharks in that water. And I would have swam with the sharks because someone told me to get out of the water. Right? But this is part of it, is because I'm not going to dial down my love of life. I'm not going to dial down my love of waves and the ocean and the salt water and the grandness of it all just because humans are fear-based. I'm not buying in. I'm not opting in. So this is a tiny thing that I could do, which is to jump in the water. But we can all do tiny things to the point that we become accustomed to living without fear. But we also stand up to people and say, you know what? We don't want that rule. We really don't want that rule. It's not a matter of just breaking the rules that are nonsensical, but it's also about resisting the inclusion of more rules. If you allow it to continue, a fear-based society, you will be ruled and governed into a tiny little bubble that you are allowed to live in. If you want to live beyond a little tiny bubble, then stop letting people rule you. Little by little, we can get that back and we can dial up the vibration of love. We can come back to where it is that we want to be. Okay? Does everyone agree? All right, so that was our building block of releasing fear. Fear no more.
Can I just say something?
Absolutely.
Because I just heard it on the radio, and I hear what you're saying, but I think it's also common sense, because every summer at least 1 or 2 people drown after going into the water after they've been told to come out. And of course, you probably know maybe what to do in a riptide or current, but you just found a boyfriend or girlfriend in the far Rockaways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Up.
Or a shark would be an issue.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm very, very, very clearly making a dramatic point, and I am. But I'm going to tell you that before we were this regulated, people had more ability to trust their own judgment, to test waters, to look for signs, to become familiar and connected to their environments, to see differences, to see shifts. Just the way an animal knows how to protect itself long before a storm comes in. We used to have that ability. So part of the consequence is that we're putting ourselves into unsafe circumstances because we've lost our intuitive sense of the environment around us. Are there going to be some anomalies? There are going to be some anomalies, but I certainly don't think we should be building 10-foot walls around a beautiful ocean to protect every person from every bit of harm. You know, one of the most interesting things is when you leave this country and you go and you venture out, it's actually quite remarkable how you could be doing something really touristy, and if you don't trust your own self and you don't use common sense, you can die. You know, there are no cemented rocks. There are no cemented gates that are shoring up sandstone. Does everyone know what sandstone is? It's the stuff that crumbles under the right conditions. You could be on a 1,000-foot cliff on sandstone, and that sandstone can crumble and you're a goner. This is the way it is all over the whole world. We used to have the ability to navigate it. We used to have the ability to truly connect with animals and plants and the environment and the winds and just get a sense of things. So yes, I understand. We do have to move back from rules long enough that we can develop our own sense again. We have removed our innate sense of being connected to intuition, to common sense, to be able to make good decisions on behalf of ourselves. It's actually fascinating. You look at the best illustration of what happens when we're too rules oriented or we're focusing so much on safety is that watch the gap. You know, pull up the stats. How many people fell into the gap before you got on the train? And it says, watch the gap, watch the gap, watch the gap. The signs say, watch the gap. Everybody fell into the gap after the campaign started. So I understand your point. However, if you look at it, what came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first really is fear preceded a lack of safety. A lack of safety did not precede fear. Because when you are in a real circumstance and you are connected to your environment and you use your senses other than someone else's suggestions or rules, you will boot up your own ability to make a good decision. And now I'm going to say something that might shock you, but sometimes I just like to shock you. But you know what? Hey, I know I'm going to sound so crass and so crude. I'm glad you all know I'm a really, really loving person before I say this, right? But so what? If you do not boot up your intuition and you're in an unregulated situation and you die, so when you go back home, you'll celebrate. You'll say, oh, that was really stupid. And next time I come back to Earth, I won't make that same mistake. Because I'm going to stay connected to my intuition. Being here is fleeting. We're here, we're not here. We're here, we're not here. This is a dream. This is an illusion. So use it, live it. Don't let someone else tell you how to use it or live it. It was so wonderful to be in countries where no one was telling me to get away from the edge. No one was blocking me with a 30-foot wall before I could go and see what I want to see. If I go to that edge on this cliff and this rock crumbles underneath me and I die, I promise I will not sue anybody. I will not sue anybody because I'm okay with the choice that it is that I made. I'm okay with it. Just for the privilege of making more choices, I am okay with that choice. Yeah.
Somebody said something a while back that Long Island's become the land of milk, but you can't do the thing you did 20, 30 years ago. Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we, do we want to live like that? There are a lot of people that do want to live like that, and that keeps them feeling safe. But in the scale of moving up the enlightenment spectrum, the more we give away our freedom and the more we give away our choices, the smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller our lives will become. One of the most alarming things I see in an increasing rate today, and I understand it, there's no judgment in any of this. Everything is about energy. Collective energy and individual energy. There's no blame. It's just cause and effect, cause and effect. But one of the alarming things I see now is an increase in agoraphobia among 20-somethings. Yeah. Is that the child's fault? Am I calling a 20-something a child? Well, is that the young person's fault? No, it's not the young person's fault. It's the 80s fault. It's every adult on this planet who is making our kids afraid. It's your fault. The young person did not create agoraphobia in their 20s. It's a consequence from living in a fear-based society. We're not meant to live like that. We are not meant to live like that. We're not meant to live like that. We just are not. We're not. We're not.
I find it's just hard to strike up the conversation with someone my own age. And, in public, if you see a random person, you want to say, give them a compliment or just make a random conversation. Like, the average 20-something-year-old just takes it the wrong way, no matter what you try and say. It's
yes.
Like you can't communicate with them the way.
Yeah. So we're observing that maybe certain things are not going the way that we want to. But in order to make an active and selected change, you have to notice that there's something heading in a direction that we don't want it to head. I know that this might sound strange, but I've had many, many opportunities to coach people who had a decent opportunity to sue somebody and perhaps even win. But we talk it through because in the scheme of things, there's a way that you actually can make a difference. And the way that you make a difference is by every single daily choice that you make. Okay. And saying, well, that did happen and it was his car or it was this, that, and I'm entitled and I know I'll win. What statement are you saying? What legacy are you leaving here on the planet? What is the outcome? If you take a bundle of money that you can get because someone's going to be afraid not to give it to you, what is the outcome? What is the testimony that you're leaving here on Earth? Okay. Now, I'm not saying that there's not really legitimate reasons for a very good and purposeful system of making sure that people are accountable in neglectful situations. We are far beyond neglect now. We are far beyond that. We're just really just afraid of everything and blaming everybody for everything. And that's where it's good to turn the tides. It's good to say, why don't we take responsibility back and let people have permission to be the deciders of their own journeys? Let people have permission to be the deciders of their own lives. You know, one of the fun things for me, and I've been doing this since 2005, really. 9/11 kicked off when I could receive, but when I could have conversations with non-physical sources, that didn't start until 2005. So with my consciousness leaving the earth on a regular basis and often, and having adventures that are beyond the scope of what most people can imagine, I get to find out things that a lot of us in our bodies don't get to discover until we return home. And one of the most relevant discoveries for me, or the most fun or fascinating ones, is that in the energy realm, we have an innate understanding that the vibration of love, which I refer to all the time, that vibration, think of it as the sun, think of it as the universe, think of it as God, think of it as all it is. Whatever makes you happy to think of what is love, it is that. It is the thing that is vibrating and extending and surrounding all of us all the time, before birth, after birth, and during this physical life. But one thing that is the most similar to that vibration, which we're very, very aware of in the energy realm, is freedom. You think it's peace, you think it's ecstasy, you think it's bliss, you think it's joy. It's not. The runner-up to that particular vibration is freedom. And we don't know what freedom is because we don't have it. We think we do because we tout United States as being the freest country. But when you use a comparative of less free to describe how free you are, you've missed the point. Why don't you use freedom as the comparative and then see where we are, which is not free, right? Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah, I had some people say, when I talk about something like this, about taking our freedom back, I'll have some people say, well, we live in the best country. You know, who can do this and who can do that? And you can come here and you can create anything you want, and you can have a company and you could do this, or you could stay home, or whatever. And I'm like, well, I can do all the comparisons in the world, but you're going to tell me that my idea of us being free enough for us is because we're more free than others? That's like saying I don't need to heal from this body disharmony because I'm less sick than others. No, it doesn't work that way. You can't use a negative comparative to say that you're doing pretty well. Do better. Set the bar higher. Right? I always find that comical. It is comical. And besides, let's just scrap that whole entire story. I'm for a borderless world. Well, we got a couple 100 years before we can get there. But when I come back in a couple of 100 years and we are borderless, you're all going to say, do you remember 2019 when you said this silliness of dividing stuff was so unnecessary and there's abundance all over the whole planet for everybody to live happily? Do you remember when you said that? Look, we're here. I'm like, well, I left because you guys weren't getting there fast enough and I was getting really frustrated. We'll get there. And I'm telling you, mark my word, and you can sue me if I'm telling a lie. I will not come back again until we're there. I need a little more. I need a little more high vibration now, okay? I mean, I'm trying to build it, but I can use a little bit more of it before I come back. Oh, sorry. If you want me to come back, I'll come back. Meanwhile, I'm staying here now for a long time, so you're stuck with me no matter what. Yay! We're all hanging out, partying in the energy realm anyway, while our lower selves, our human bits of consciousness are doing their thing here. All of us are up there like, oh, those poor kids. Wish I could just get through to them. Oh, sometimes I feel like that when I'm listening to one of your guides when I'm in a session. You know, I could hear them. They're like, I know you're not allowed to shake her.
Really say that, would they?
If they wanted to have a private joke with me, they would. Because I tell you, the funniest souls in existence are the ones without bodies. I don't know what happens when we grab our bodies. We get just so damn serious, you know? So sometimes I have to get a little more serious so that people can hear me. Because life in the energy realm is very, very, very fun. It really is. It's nonstop wonder and expansion, and it's fantastic. But we can have that here. That's our goal. Our goal is to create at least a mini version of it for ourselves, since we might not be able to get all of humanity there yet, but at least create a mini utopia within your range of consciousness and your range of touch and feel and experience. You can. When you come in a room, everyone should feel a little bit better, because you are in that room now. And we can all do that. I made a decision in, it was 2005 when I was starting to understand the meaning of life, which had eluded me for all of those years beforehand. And I made a conscious decision then, when I started to understand the importance of interconnectedness and, you know, valuing everyone and releasing judgment and loving one another and growing back the self-love that had been ripped away from me as a child. I started to realize what the heck we were all doing here. And then I made a choice. I said, my choice is that I want every person that I interact with to feel at least as good after interacting with me as they did before, if not better. That's my whole mantra. And I live by that. I live by it. I very, very, very rarely don't live by it. Very rarely. I slipped up, you know, a few times over the last decade that I can remember. And it's usually with a customer service person on the phone. Sorry. And you know what? I call back. It's weird, but I do call back and apologize. I can't get that person on the phone, but if I've jotted their name down, I will say, listen, I was on the phone with Francine the other day, and I was horrid. And I'm not going to tell you why I was horrid, because you work for that company, so you probably imagine it was earned. But I was not good. I didn't behave well, and I felt terrible about it. And I will call back and apologize. It doesn't make it better, because an apology can't undo something that was there. That person is off, you know, trying to make dinner for her family, and she's all trying to get rid of the energy of what I put on her that day. You know what I mean? Right? It's just like not right. So my feeling is every person that I encounter, I want them to feel at least as good as they felt before they encountered me, and preferably better. Preferably better. Right? Yeah. It's not that hard, actually. Like I said, 3 slip-ups with 3 companies, but that's not so bad, right? It's not so bad. Maybe 4. But I don't think I've had slip-ups, in person. I mean, some people might just be like, they want to hate me. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. Then you might have a bad experience being with me because you've already decided that you don't want to like me. But that would be your journey. I'm not responsible for that. But as long as I didn't do anything knowingly that was uncomfortable or mean or dismissive or ignorant or anything like that, I'm good. I'll participate how I can participate. Interestingly, I don't bring anyone like that into my life anymore. I just don't. The vibration, I guess, doesn't bring them into my space. So along the journey, when you got a lot of stuff and you got to duke it out with the world, right? You got to punch a little back for all the times you were punched when you were a kid. In the beginning, you're going to bring people in to punch, whether you're having a verbal punch or, a customer service punch. You're going to pull those people in because you have to dissipate that energy, and you have not yet realized where the trigger came from in your childhood. So you got to duke it out too. And whoever's standing there is going to get the blow. So I did it. I used to draw people in that would get me really angry or mad or frustrated or disempowered is the correct word. I brought people in like that all the time. And if I didn't come back right then, I would stay up at night and write imaginary letters overnight, you know, and then I'd cross things out and I'd reword them. Hey, I'm a little older than some people in the room. I would go backspace on my typewriter and slip in the corrected type and redo the word. I got a few laughs. 10 years from now, no one will know what I'm talking about. But I would do it. I had revenge plots going. I had, oh my God, if you could be in the battles I was in the middle of the night in my mind, you'd be like, wow, I think there's a Marvel movie in that one. But I don't get those people anymore, you know, even those people that I beat up on in customer service, they didn't do anything to deserve it. They were actually quite kind because I still magnetized them in. They're the ones that got my call when we're going around in rotation. I didn't get the ones that are gonna be mean. I just didn't. So that's it. Wow. Okay. You know, it's interesting. I have a bunch of clients that are actually doctors or chiropractors or so on. And one of the parts of my practice is to actually coach them within how much the world has changed. And if you know anybody that works in medicine, you know how different things are now than they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. You know, it's an unnatural stress now to have to deal with the malpractice and the litigiousness and the health insurance companies. The people that would be my clients, their intention is so beautiful and so bright and so pure and so much wanting to make a difference and to help people and to bring them to harmony. But we're actually, with the way that we're behaving as a whole culturally, the way that we're behaving is we're making it impossible for those lights to shine. Almost all of my really high vibrational energy doctors now, they no longer take insurance. And I think that that's a tough statement, because you have to now go back to being able to afford the services of the people that are vibrating in the vibration of love, because you can't use your insurance because they can't practice under the circumstances that insurance has provided. So we have to look at these things sometimes and say, what are we doing? What are we doing? We don't want to keep living like this, right? And a couple of them, one's out that way, one's out that way. Two of them, they can't keep up with the demand, cannot keep up with the demand, even though they don't accept insurance and they're not cheap. Because there's a real urge for people to get back to the humanity of really caring and using the diagnostic tool of intuition. Using the diagnostic tool of intuition. Wow. That's amazing, right? Amazing. Amazing. If we can get back into the inner sight that we really have, that's been dialed down by people outside of us. I didn't even get to the building block of the day yet. The building block of the month. Let me take a sip of water, because man, I have spoken a bit, huh? Let me take a sip of water. Huh? June's was to get fired up about your life. We tend to spend so much time in tasks and in responsibilities that we forget to just go out there and have our life, right? I got to do the laundry. I got to walk the dog. I got to go get my vaccination because I'm visiting somebody's baby. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. We forgot to just fire up our lives. You know, even in the day when it was not necessarily completely open that we could all have careers of choice and it was limited to a certain segment of the population. At least one thing that was a little harmonious is that segment of the population came home at 5:15. And then they got to do whatever their hobby was, whether it was breaking down a car and putting it up on blocks and rebuilding it, or it was, you know, designing birdhouses and building them by hand. At least there was this opportunity to fire up life. There was a work portion, and then there was life, and work supported life. Life did not support work. right? As often as I can, when I'm coaching somebody, and I coach a lot of people that have high-end jobs, and as often as I can, and it's fairly often, I'll help guide them toward decreasing their hours and decreasing their employees' hours. And I have to tell you, you think that that's impossible? We're talking like heart surgical units in major city hospitals. You think you can't do it, right? You hear that, you're like, no, you can't do that. The answer is you can do it. You can do it. Everything is about your perspective. Everything is about your belief system. As soon as you believe you can't do it, you can't do it. One woman, we got her hours reduced. She was the head of heart surgical. We got her hours reduced within 3 months from 72 hours a week to under 55 within 3 months. By the time we were done coaching in 6 months, her and her staff were under 50 hours a week. Can be done. You got to break the shackles. You got to break what other people tell you. I know it is. Absolutely. Honestly, if you're about to have open heart surgery, do you want the person in that room with you working their 71st hour that week? Or do you want them working their 42nd tops? I don't know about you, but I'm like, before you put the anesthesia on me, let me see your time card. Time cards. Everybody, you're going to be in there? You're going to be in there? You're going to be in there? Let's see your time card. All right, let me see vacation records. When was the last time you had a good day off? Right? Imagine we did that. Imagine we did that.
Behind it was fear.
So we gotta bust the fear. We gotta bust it. One person at a time, one thought at a time, one interaction at a time. Right? I know for me, one of the things I had the greatest realization in 2019 coming into this year is I can't do it alone. That I'm so clear of. I have tried to do as much as I can. I have tried. I keep trying. I'm not going to stop trying, but I can't do it alone. So as soon as something gets ignited in you that has been ignited in me already, and you know it resonates, you got to go out and do it. Not once, not twice, but 1,000 times. Right? This is the beauty of being conscious beings, is that we get to happily and joyfully, we get to share good ideas with other people. It's not about criticizing others. It's not about telling people what to do and what not to do, but it's about making suggestions that they can be happier with, right? If the guides are making suggestions to someone that's working 72 hours a week about what that might look like if you're working less, is that a bad thing to share a possibility to change a mindset? When she tried it out little by little, she was terrified. Of course she thought she was going to get fired, right? As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you the truth. You know what helped? She actually wound up falling when she was running, and she busted her knee. And I know, and she knows, by the time we got on the phone again, we both knew that the purpose of it was so that she could have physical therapy 3 times a week for the beginning of the reduction of her hours, so that everybody could see things went fine when she wasn't there. So my point is, by saying this, we know how this works. She didn't bust her knee to bust a knee. She busted a knee so she could have a socially acceptable excuse to reduce her hours. My version is, you don't need a socially acceptable excuse. All you need is truth and the love that says, I don't want us, me, you, or any of us to work 70 hours a week. We're here to live. We're not here to work. You know, there's nothing on earth that could happen on a Sunday that's more important than being where I am on a Sunday, and not with you through email or text or phone, right? Yeah. Nothing, unless you really are in an emergency situation. But really, truly, honestly, people, how many emergencies are there? How many work-related emergencies are there?
0.
If you don't work for,
0.
you know, the police department or the fire department, there really aren't work-related emergencies, are there? They really aren't. We make them all up. We make them up to feel as though we matter, to make sure that we have an identity that feels purposeful, so that we have something to talk about on the 4th of July barbecue, how significant our lives are because I was working till 9 o'clock on Sunday. They needed me. Yeah, really? What happens if that fabric doesn't get out until tomorrow? You know, really think about this, right? I don't care what you do. There's nothing that can't wait. Go to another country, right? Wait for your sandwich in another company. I'm going to tell you, there's nothing that can't wait. Absolutely. So that's it. We're all in this together. You just do a little bit. Whatever you have the courage to do, you do a little bit. Do a little bit, you do a little bit, you do a little bit of something, a little bit of shift, a little bit of change, a little bit of anything. I was relatively incapable of being a fast responder when I started this part of my journey because I was technologically inept. Everyone knew me, saw it. So if I didn't get back to you for a couple of days, it was because I didn't know how to work email or a phone or a text, and that was fine. Everybody adjusted, right? Well, now here it is 12 years later. People understand that I might not necessarily get back to you quickly because I don't believe that this is an urgent experience that we're sharing this planet together. Are there some times where being there very, very quickly is essential? Yes. And somehow, some way, that'll be the one thing I click on, and then I'll be there for anybody. But for the most part, there really are no crises. We make them up. We make them up for whatever reason. We're afraid to be happy. You know, we need an identity. We need to be important. We need to be special. We need to be valued. When I worked in the defense industry, also going to age myself as I was working on my typewriter, I was required, I had, all kinds of security clearance, and I was required to carry a beeper, which was unheard of. So I was one of the first people other than a doctor to carry a beeper. And you would think, how cool is that, right? That's really pretty cool. Well, the first time I got beeped on a Sunday, I have to tell you, I was so pissed off. How dare you beep me on a Sunday, which means I have to find the nearest phone. I have to call in. I have to fix the crisis, only to find out that it's on the left-hand shelf behind the whatever, where you left it, whatever the crisis was. No planes came down. And trust me, as a young woman in the defense industry, I wasn't responsible for whether a plane came down or not. So what did I need a beeper for, right? But it was interesting how that made me feel. It made me feel unfree. It made me feel unfree. It really made me feel unfree. And maybe that's part of, in my trajectory, that if I can help people understand the value of freedom, maybe that was just one little thing that was useful for me to experience what it feels like on such a tiny level, to remind people that freedom is something that we want to vibrate in and continually take on a regular basis to take our freedom. Okay? All right. All right, let's take a very brief break so you can mingle and have water or cool. And I also would like to, before we get started on what the building block of this month is, I want to just update everybody on our trip to Grenada. And one of the things I talked about is you leave the country, it's a little more laid back. My preparations with Grenada is a little bit more laid back. They're not on my calendar. I'm on their calendar. That's really interesting, but we finally have things figured out. So I keep postponing when I'm releasing information, but we finally have things worked out, which is really good news. So I've extended the date of the $200 deposit to July 15th. And then from July 15th on, first in on a first come, first served basis, we'll be contacting each person so that they can have their accommodations of choice. Then we'll go to the next on the list and the next and the next and the next, okay? And for those who register later, They'll just be able to choose from whatever accommodations remain, and hopefully we'll do our best to have everybody satisfied. But is there anyone here that has booked their flight yet? Anyone? No one. All right, good. I haven't heard of anyone that's booked their flight. One of the challenges that I just became aware of, and I really am monitoring things with flying, because when you see the rates to come for this experience with us, you'll see I kept the cost as low as I possibly could. They are low. The costs are low. They really are low. Airfare is going to be a little bit higher. I don't have any control over that, and I'm not going to make any money on it. All right, they're a little bit higher. However, there is a nonstop flight to and from JFK that's cheap. I mean, you can't go to California for less. You really can't. However, I did notice that JFK canceled that flight for January 20th, the day that we're leaving. Okay, so we have an option. You can stay the extra day and save some money on piecing together other flights. It means you'll have, a layover somewhere. You can stay over and I'll get you a great room rate. The hotel's already said they'll give us a great room rate for those who are staying the extra night. But what I'm trying to do, and this is my preference if no one has booked their flight yet, is I'm trying to shift the whole entire experience from Thursday to Monday to Friday to Tuesday instead, so that everybody can still get those nonstop, really good rate flights there and back. That's what I'm aiming to do. And I'm on Grenadian time, so it might take me, it would have been done if it were just me, might take me a day or so to get a yes on it, but I feel like that's what I'll be able to do. Okay? Yeah.
Whatever you do, you do Friday or Tuesday or whatever. Friday morning.
Well, we would begin Friday as
right in the morning. So, okay.
No, we would begin Friday evening.
Oh, evening.
So you have Friday as your travel day.
Okay.
The way that I looked at it is, if you are employed during the week, during the day, by shifting it one day, you're not going to have to take any more time off work. That was my hope. I could have shifted it to Wednesday to Sunday, but because it's, we got the holiday on Monday, you would wind up having to take another day off work. And I don't want to make people do that are unable to do that. So my goal is to not have people take an extra day off if they didn't want to. You can do all your traveling easily on Friday and still be a part of our experience on Friday. Okay, it would change the nature of our welcoming party on Friday, because the event I had planned for Friday night, I'm not canceling it. So you're gonna hit the road. You're gonna hit the ground running, but that's okay. So we'll hit the ground running. Yeah.
When does it end on Tuesday?
Whichever day we end, whether it's Monday or Tuesday, we're going to wrap up our portion of it by 12 o'clock. 1 o'clock the very latest. The airport is 4.5 miles away. We're talking Grenada here. It takes 6 minutes to get through the airport. And the airplane, the one that I'm referring to, leaves at 4:15. So we definitely will end in enough time for people to make that flight. Okay? The flight is 4 hours and something.
So now it's like 17th to the 21st.
I'm trying.
Right.
I'm trying. Right now it's the 16th to the 20th. Right now it is the 16th to the 20th. 20th is the Martin Luther King Day.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but I'm doing my best, and this is my hope, and I'm checking little by little with anyone that gave their deposit to make sure. I wrote to a few people and asked them not to book their flights yet, so that we can take care of this. Worst comes to worst, there are nonstop flights out of Miami, out of Atlanta, and so there are definitely ways to get back if you absolutely have to come back on Monday. I'm just trying to make it so that you can get a nonstop flight instead of a layover. That's all. Okay. Yeah.
Is it a retreat you're having in Grenada?
There it is. I'm not a big fan of the word retreat. I don't know why. But it is an experience. We'll be doing a lot of what we do here, but deeper and in more meaningful ways. There'll be experiential things that we do together. We will, whether you want to call it class or whatever, you're going to have hours of class a day. But hey, I'll make it as fun as I possibly can. There will be hours of class a day. But we're also, I have a good friend that was born and raised in Grenada. and he is helping to co-create the entire experience with us, the Grenadian way. I've never enjoyed being a tourist. I don't want to start being a tourist now. I don't do things like a tourist does. So we're going to Grenada like Grenadians go to Grenada. We have everything that I have planned for us is about being with Grenadian people, eating Grenadian food, sometimes using Grenadian transportation. And this is a beautiful, safe, warm, and welcoming island. So being able to be in an environment where you don't have to worry about all the news going on all over at these other vacation places, it's going to be refreshing for us to actually be able to live on this island and to live happily and freely while we're there. It's going to be very refreshing. And we have a lot of people there that are eager for our visit and eager to support us. And they've got things that they're planning and things that are in the works for us. So I'm really excited about it. You know, a little bit of your American standard. If you have American ideas of certain things, you just got to relax it a little bit, because we might not necessarily have 3 choices of carb-free fish that night, but you know, we have to relax our stuff a little tiny bit. But I promise you that we will. I promise you that we're going to do our very, very best to, you know, accommodate everybody. What? No, I didn't mean it that way. I said 3 choices. I said 3 choices. You know, and I also do believe that the American food supply is what makes us have so many aversions to food. When you leave this country, you can actually go out there and eat stuff you can't eat in the United States, and it has no adverse effect. I find this to be very largely true. Not that I'm not going to be the one to push you into an experiment. We are going to have foods for everybody to eat. Trust me. I mean, how much carb can a fish have when you pull it out of the ocean and you feed it to somebody 20 minutes later? It's not going to have a lot of carbs, right? Not going to have a lot of gluten. We will have food to eat. However, my point is that
alcohol.
the purest alcohol from the earth. I did not check that. I think I've checked everything except for that. But I'm going to say probably not. Probably not. You've been to Grenada? All right, well, let me give you guys, because you went through all the effort of coming out tonight, I'll give you one sneak preview, okay? One of the things that we're going to be doing is we're joining up with the American Medical School and the students as well as the professors, and we're going on what they call a hash. And a hash is a day when you go and you have a physical adventure together. And their hashes, they're kind of a big deal. They love it, absolutely love it. We meet at a certain point and they map out, depending on your fitness level, an easy trek through the waterfalls, or they call it the bush, but through the bush, or they have a more difficult course for runners or people that are in optimal fitness, and they're designed that however long it would take you to run a trail versus us walking the more leisurely way, that you end up at the same time. And then we go to a local place that's prepared for us, and they're expecting us to come in, and they have cases and cases of beer and rum on ice for us to get there, okay? So, and they bring us Grenadian food, and we eat that food, and we drink their drink, and we have a great, and they'll have soda too, and they'll have water. So that's one of the adventures that we'll have, okay? And it's fun. And I know that the students and the professors at the medical school, they love when, you know, when other people join them, because they do this every week, and they're very excited about us coming. They're already preparing for us being there. Okay, pretty cool. Good. So anyway, any other questions about Grenada? Yes, you need to bring a notebook and a pen. I get that all the time. Yes, you need a notebook and a pen, or a pencil, or a piece of charcoal, or a tube of lipstick, but you need a writing implement. You know what I have found? I had an intuitive objection to people taking notes in an iPhone when iPhones started coming out, right? And now what I realize is my intuition was telling me that what happens with a phone is it goes into a black hole, and the paper, it gives you a visual cue. So we actually do need visual cues. So you might think you're phenomenal with this and you're really organized, but unless you put reminders in there that are in sync with your need, it's not going to work. It doesn't do the job it's supposed to do, which is to bring the body into the experience. So the physical still does work. It still does work. Okay? All right, cool.
You had the flip phone and you would not let go.
I wouldn't let it go. I know.
You wanted to buy as many as you could.
I did. I had people donating them to me for years. I must have had 5 or 6 flip phones, razors.
I still have one in my drawer.
I'm ready for it.
I know. Oh, I want to clean out this drawer. My flip phone. You said you'd never do that.
I know. Well, my family had an intervention. They did. They honestly did. They had an intervention. And I was so uncomfortable.
Is there a video of it?
It's embarrassing. You want to see me act like a 6-year-old? The intervention was embarrassing for me. It really was. Wow. I don't even want to think about it. I'm okay now.
Right, it's in the past.
It's in the past. Which brings me to the building block of the night, the building block of July. I'm going to keep it relatively brief, so you got to keep up to my speed really fast tonight because I want to turn my attention to the questions that you have, okay? So the building block for this month, for the month of July, is the building block is, listen, I do have to preface it. I mean to keep it fast, but I do have to preface it. The advent of modern psychology offered the opportunity for us to understand some really profound things about the way that we live and the triggers and the experiences and the cause and effect of human behavior. So modern psychology has been incredibly helpful in helping us to ferret out different things that might be hidden within us and to unearth them and to recover from them and to move on. Okay. However, within anything that it is that we do, there's a balance. And one of the things that I am witnessing, and I'm sure all of you are witnessing, is that because we now know that there are triggers from our past that create disharmony in our lives today or separate from us our whole ability to fully love ourselves, because we're aware of that relationship and that equation now. One thing we're doing is we're obsessing with finding out what's wrong with us, okay? Obsessing with it. So even people with really high vibrational energy, after they find an unconscious memory and they take it out and they do all the work and they do this and they do that and they have a party and all that. So they unearth it, they resolve it, they reharmonize it, they feel good for 14 seconds. And then they're looking for the next thing that's wrong, right? The next thing unresolved, the next bit of pain that created some kind of strife in their adulthood. Or why do I do that? Why am I afraid of water dripping in the sink? You're not afraid of water dripping in the sink. You don't like the sound. You don't like the waste. Don't go to therapy over the water dripping in the sink. You know? I mean, so the whole entire building block is you can look at the past for comprehension about something about you that is not fully expressed or realized. Where you have separated from your ability to love yourself, you can look to the past to see where some experience or some person or some experiences has separated you from the awesomeness of yourself. Once you see the cause and the effect, go through what you can do to take that comprehension to rebuild your self-love and your belief that you're entitled to a happy and a whole and abundant and healthy and vibrant life. Then let it go. Move on. Don't spend the rest of your life looking in the past for what's wrong with you. Truly, there's nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. You are so perfect and so powerful that anything happened to you before this moment, you can make a decision and a choice to change who you are in this second, and how you live and how you perceive and how you act and how you think and how you choose and how you be. Okay? We can all do it. I have had tons of times when I'm on a phone or in a session, in-person session with a client, and I know from the guides of a very traumatic happening that that person had when they were younger that they don't remember. And I've had two situations with it. One is how the guides gently help me to help that person reveal it to themselves. Okay? The other is the guides are like, this is for your benefit, Karen. However, it's not going to serve the long-term benefit for the client to know. But if you can give them the benefits in this session, which are blah, 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 and blah, then this person will be able to move forward. Do you follow me? Which means you don't have to unearth everything. If there's something in your life that's a little anomalous, like it just plain old doesn't make sense. Like I had a guy that wasn't really fear-based, and he had an incredible fear of fire. So yeah, we want to take a peek at it. We did take a peek at it. We were able to find the source, and he was able to move on because it didn't make sense. It did not make sense. For the most part, the little things about us that have made us lose our ability to love ourselves fully or know how awesome we are, or maybe behave badly or do things in our past that we regret or we feel ashamed about, we're pretty much able to sort it out and figure it out. And a little bit of help is great. A little bit of help is great. But treat help as a finite experience. Treat looking at the past as a finite experience. Don't treat it as a lifetime pursuit, because you're never going to start living this life. Live this life. Live this moment on. Choose from this moment on to fully, fully, fully love yourself. You can. You can. You can. You can. You can think of something you regret. You can think of something you're ashamed of. Who cares? What's done is done, right? You can't put up a tree that falls. You can't unsting yourself after you get stung by a bee, right? You can't undo stuff. Stuff happened. I guarantee anything that you did that was harmful to yourself or others ever in your entire life was triggered by something that happened when you were a kid. You did not create that. We're not born that way. No one is born bad. No one is born evil. No one is born horrible. No one is born any of that. We're born loving. We're born compassionate. We're born vibrant. We're born explosive. We're born radiant. We're born magnificent. We're born limitless. We're born endless. We're born full. Any time that got dialed down was dialed down by someone else. So trust that you are worthy. Trust that you are lovable. Trust that you are whole. Trust that you deserve to be happy. Trust that you are entitled to good relationships, good health, good experience with the material world. Start to really, really trust it, and then live as if it's so. Live as if it's so. Live as if it's so, okay? That's it.
What's the 1 second sentence for that?
So, anyway, so don't obsess about the past. The past is to give you comprehension about the fact that you really are awesome and you really are whole. You know, I've made a choice 12 years ago when I started this part of my journey to not share the details of my childhood. And let me tell you, there's some really horrible things in there. And I know some of you have had it worse than me. And I'm going to say many of you haven't had it as bad. It doesn't matter how bad my childhood was. And a lot of it really sucked, I'm telling you. It's amazing that I am who I am today. My point is that if I can become who I am from where I came, I believe every single person can become who they really are from where they came. Okay? This is not who I was in my 30s. It's not. It is not. It is not. I was a hot flipping mess. And now I'm not. Okay? And you also are worthy of not being a hot flipping mess. So you don't have to be. You can be happy. You can live a life of joy. You can live a life of an expression of you, not anybody else. You, 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 you. Okay? That's the building block. How do you even put that in a sentence? Look at the past to see how great you are now, but don't obsess over it. I'm at a loss. How do I put that in a sentence? That's good?
Yes.
That did it? All right, good. All right, so let's,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
So when you said, so do you go through forgiveness?
Oh, that's a great, in my Happy in 90 program, the online program, one of the things that we do is we really, really manage past pain. And conscious pain, you do need to manage it. So I'm not saying don't manage it. It's important to manage it. But manage it and move the F on, right? That's the whole point. Manage it and move the F on.
That's the second right there.
Manage it and move the F on? Oh, boy, would I love to type that out tomorrow on my little typewriter. Thank you. Move forward sounded a little sweeter. But yes, you do have to manage it and find your own personal way to come to reharmonization with it. And in Happy in 90, we go through the ways to do it. And all of the ways that are in Happy in 90 are the things I did to manage those experiences in my own life. And that's one of the reasons why I was able to recover from the pain, is because I did manage it. I did move past it. I did move past it. I'll say when you're looking to manage something, when you do the big steps, you knock off such a big chunk of it. A lot of people get intimidated if a trigger comes after they did that big work. But let's remember that let's say you knock off 60, 70% the first crack at it, right? If you're still holding on to 30% and something stimulates your memories or your discomfort, it's okay. You're not back at square one. But because you're living happier, because you knocked off 70%, your new frame of reference of suffering is here instead of here. So if you drop to here, you're still better off than you were before you knocked off the first 70%, right? But because the dip feels painful, you're afraid. You went back to square one. You did not go back to square one. Okay? Do we understand that? You might have to amp up your tools that got you there the first time. You might have to talk to a friend and get another tool. It's okay. But next you're going to take off another chunk. You're going to knock off another 15% or 20%. And we can all live with 5% of what we carry. The memories help us feel even more proud of how far we've come, right? Understand? Okay. Does that help? Okay.
That's all.
But who knows? I might be answering some of these questions just by continuing to go on with this, right? Okay, so let's just pick one. I'll just pick one. What is fear of success or happiness all about? Fear of success, it's not actually a fear. It's the dial down that I was talking about from childhood, that you don't feel worthy of complete happiness. So we dial it down as adults because usually something that happened to us when we were young made us feel as though we were unworthy. And we continue to carry that feeling of unworthiness into adulthood. And therefore we'll dial down success and happiness because we don't have a frame of reference for being allowed it. Okay, so it's a matter of dialing it up and giving ourselves permission. And when you dial it up, it's really hard to go from 0 to 100 overnight. So you dial it up and you test it a little bit, you test it a little bit. I think last month I was telling you about a client whose homework assignment was to to accept 3 favors from another person without reciprocating. She was okay. It was like 3 favors from another person. That's kind of hard. And then I said, without reciprocity. And she's like, no, I can't do it. No, you mean I can't even, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. So you see how she's in a lifetime where she feels that her value is pleasing other people, because that's what she was taught when she was younger, right? You can almost understand why accepting a favor and not reciprocating on it would make her feel so unsettled. It makes sense. So for her to move past it, she couldn't go to 100 right away. She couldn't say, nobody, no favors ever again. I'm not helping any of you dumbasses. Go figure your own stuff out. She couldn't do that, but she could say, let me accept 3 favors, right? Without reciprocity. And, you know, I encourage her to go to somebody that loves her or adores her or appreciates her. You know, and you'll see how fast and eager they are to do you a favor because you never let them. They're going to be really happy. They're going to feel good that they got to reciprocate all of the kindness that you bring into their lives. So you amp it up a little bit. You don't have to go all the way, but just amp it up. You got to practice and practice and practice. I probably told you last month too about the guy who his homework assignment was to go to bed with a few dishes in the sink. I didn't think I was going to be able to get him out of his chair again. He was so miserable about the thought of leaving a few dirty dishes in the sink. That's how hard it was. So he did it, you know, 1 fork one day, 1 dirty fork in the sink, go to bed and go to sleep. He didn't leave the entire cabinet of dirty dishes with grease stains and no Palmolive or Dawn in the house. He left a dish. And so next day he could leave 3 dishes. Because he knew the value in leaving those dishes in the sink for him. So you go, you just take steps. Just keep taking steps, keep taking steps. The hardest one for me to convert in my life, of all the areas that I improved, was my relationship with my body, my relationship with my health. That one was the most persistent, where it would keep coming back, and my set point was very, very low. Body disharmony, not being fit, not being healthy, not being who I could be. My body did not reflect my soul in any form back then. That was the one I had to stick with, and I could only take a little piece off a day or a month, but I kept working. It was worth it for me to stick with it for the long run. So that's what it is. It's not fear. No one's afraid of being successful. No one's afraid of being happy. They just don't think that they're worthy of it. Okay? Next. This person writes a question like I write a question. Use the entire piece of paper with diagrams and arrows and... Okay. Now, this is a good question. It's not formed as a question. I have to figure out the question in it, but that's cool because I'm intuitive, so I can do it. So let me pull a question out of that. It's basically illness. Are we born with it or do we create it? That's a very interesting question because everyone can, you know, listen to me about amp up your relationship with your body. And you're like, well, what about a child? What do you say to a child? One of the interesting opportunities for discovery that we have on Earth is there are 4 vehicles for discovery, why we choose physical manifestation for the development of the soul. One of them is the maturation process, which means that we develop from being dependent to being independent. We go from immaturity to maturation. This is true with plants and animals and humans. So when we are developing a young soul in a human body, they're co-creating their reality with those around them, with their caregivers and all people and experiences of influence. So at birth, a child cannot feed itself, right? So you can see the level of dependency. So at birth, a child, a newborn baby, might be creating his, I'll just use one gender, it's easier for me, might be creating his reality 5 to 10% by who he is as a soul, but 90% of his reality is based on the humans that are around him and experiencing his life with him. Now, as he matures and learns to feed himself and walk and talk and so on, and he starts to grow and develop an adult way of perceiving, the balance will shift or should shift. So ultimately, when the child becomes an adult, he should be manifesting his reality through 90% of what he thinks and feels and believes in the actions that he takes, and 10% of the influence of the humans around him. It doesn't happen optimally like that. We tend to, smother one another, and therefore we're not at those numbers, the 10 and the 90, when we get to be adults. But the purpose of it is so that we can experience both things. The opportunity to see the power that we have, but also the opportunity to see the power that we have in influencing others, or influencing any organic matter, for that matter. All right, plants and animals and so on. So we sometimes can't see the power that we have in our own lives, but we can see the reflection of our energy and our choices as it influences or shapes or changes someone else. So when a child has an illness, the child's illness is not about their manifestation. It's about a co-creation of manifestation about the adult community around them. It's an expression and an opportunity for discoveries to come into that particular circle. It could be the primary family, the immediate family. It could be that particular community. It could even be a region. We are all connected. We're not limited to this one experience, even if you think that this is, all there is. We're not. It extends beyond. So a high vibrational energy soul might be allowing their body to be used for an opportunity for a discovery for an entire region. So when a child becomes older, the influence that they have in creating their relationship with their body increases. So adults, we have far more influence over healthfulness than a child has influence over their healthfulness. Does that make sense? There's really no age of maturation. Of course, we pick numbers. It's 18, it's 21, it's 25, it's 16. We have to pick numbers just to keep moving forward as a society. So we pick relative cutoff numbers that are pretty good about taking the what do you call that? Statistical probability, right? The probability is 90% of those that are 18 have the ability to do this, that, or the other thing. But one of the reasons that having cutoff ages and dates, why it's good for a society to do that, is because the brain does need to continue to grow and to mature. And we want to make sure that we have the privilege of being able to helpfully guide that child to their levels of maturity so that they can trust their own instincts and have great ability to make decisions for their own future and their own life. But because maturity, the maturation process, you don't go from doing 10% of your life to 90% overnight. There's a lot of graduations in between, right? It's a journey. It's a slow journey. So we want to even be mindful of not over influencing a 9-year-old about that, or a 2-year-old about that, or a 17-year-old about that. Letting go is one of the hardest things in the process of maturation, and letting these little independent beings become independent. That's our job. Our job is to grow these things from being 100% dependent on us to becoming as independent as possible, to go from dependency to interdependency to independency with harmony. That's the process. Okay. And it's not to say that when you're an adult, because you're the one that's manifesting your relationship with your body, it doesn't mean that you're flawed or inadequate if you're manifesting body disharmony, because your body is your messenger. Your body is born of the earth and it dies of the earth. Your eternal being comes in here and your body's constantly talking to you to try to have conversations with you about things that you have forgotten. And everything that happens to your body is that. It's a conversation. Whether you have a kidney infection or you have a epilepsy or you have a broken elbow, every single manifestation of body disharmony is a conversation to help us remember things that we knew before we were born that we forgot at the hands of someone else while we were in our bodies. Did that help? I think I answered that. I hope I did. Hope I picked, I don't even know what time it is anymore.
5 to 9.
Okay, so we're good. I can pick another one? Good.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to read it out loud and we'll all figure it out together this time. What would you say to an older person who says young people shouldn't be drifting? I have someone in my life who keeps giving me advice and trying to fix me when I don't believe I need to be fixed. Wow. Okay. More than likely, that person was a weed-smoking hippie back in the 60s. So just remind them that they did it too. And they found their way. You too can find your way. Well, done. Okay, let's get to another one.
Manage it, move the F on.
What's that? What'd you say?
I said, manage it, move the F on.
Yeah, manage it and move the F on.
I'm making a t-shirt.
I think, all right, I'm going to sell these t-shirts next month. Manage it and move the F on. I like V-necks.
Oh, yes.
Manage it and move the F on. I can just see it, you know how people don't become famous until after they die, right? Yeah. The life of Karen Garvey is going to come out. It's going to say, manage it and move the F on. Right. And I'm not going to have anything to say about it. That's going to be the title of the book. I will say something about it. I will be in touch. I will say, great idea. I hope it sells a lot. Here's what I want you to do with the money.
You're be channeling the book.
Well, hopefully I can name the book before I die. That would be even better. Where was I? What was I doing? I was doing something. Oh, answering the question. Okay, the answer is that, every generation will experience people that believe that they have wisdom that can guide you because it's something that they learned or something that they experienced themselves. And out of love, it often means that they're going to try to do the same, have you create the same equation that they had that seems to have worked out okay for them. But what's really interesting is, when I was talking about that maturation process, our job is to bring the kids in, from complete dependence to interdependence to independence, is that every child will eventually have to make their way in this world. They're not going to grow up in the world we lived in. They're not going to grow up in the world that their children live in. Whatever's going on this planet at this moment, that's the world that they have to learn how to navigate. And what also is going to happen is that their soul's development is going to happen in this body. And whatever their soul is wanting to discover, the more you push for them to discover something that you want them to discover because you think it's going to make them safe, the more they're going to push back and the more they're going to dig their heels in because there's some intuitive part of them that knows that they're going to have to figure this out on their own. And maybe, just maybe, your version of the equation of their life is not the one that's going to work out best for them. When we were, when you look back on the 60s and you think about the buttoned up version of people talking about the hippies, those are the people now that are still anti-war and understand that there's a different way to perceive reality. But their parents at the same time thought that all of this was nonsense. There was a great big divide then. There's a great big divide now. There'll be a great big divide in 100 years. But if you look at it, the things that we were so critical of, the hippies and the flower children for, now we're embracing it. We're just trying to do it maybe a little more drug-free. right? So maybe the ideas of what our kids are bucking, maybe they're right, and we need to find a different way to happily and peacefully coexist. We listened to their advice for a really long time, and we did everything that they told us to do, right? And now we have $200,000 worth of debt and making $40,000 a year, and our taxes are $11,000 on our home. So maybe our advice wasn't that great. Maybe we have to let our kids figure it out on their own. That's the kind of thing that I would try to say, all right? Some parents are a little more stubborn, or some adults are a little more stubborn, and you've got to write out the math. Do the math. Find out what that person's income was in 1973 and what the cost of a house was. You know, just do the math and show them the science behind it. We don't live in the same world you lived in. The equation is not the same. We got to make new rules. It's a brand new game. And we're going to make new rules. And we're going to have the freedom and the possibility to know we're all going to be okay no matter what rules we make up. Okay? I don't know if I talked about this last month, but as long as we're not doing harm to ourselves or others, don't make up harm that we're doing to ourselves if we're not. We're just not. We're really not. Just because we're making different choices doesn't mean we're doing harm. Do I have time for another, or are we good? One more? One more. I point this out often because I think it's a valuable thing to remember. We each have a lane in our lives in which we've been intuitive since birth and no one has separated us from it. There's something that's gone innately well since you were born, whether it's in your relationship with a career, education, academia, friendship, your relationship with your body, your relationship with money, investments, yourself, whatever it is. We each have one lane at least that's gone relatively well, and we don't have to hypermanage it. And that's where our intuition has always been intact. We haven't unknown it. We haven't let it go. For me, it happened to be, and I don't know why, but I'm grateful that it is, the place I never lost my intuitive ability was in raising kids. And, 3 for 3, they really, what more would we possibly want? They're healthy, they're happy, they're themselves. They are 3 individuals, 3 amazing individuals. And that's not just a schmoopy kind of mom talk. They're happy. That's what matters. They're happy. They're making these lives for themselves, and they're doing a really good job at it. So what I am telling you is that leave everybody alone. My parenting style was to just leave the kids alone. You know, it didn't mean I didn't love them, and I certainly didn't neglect them, but I left them alone. I taught them to trust themselves. That's what I gave them. I gave them the gift of staying out of their way. That's what I gave them. We all have this ability. I have such faith in their decision-making process because I didn't make their decisions for them. As soon as they were old enough to make a decision, even before they were old enough to make a decision, I handed it back to them. And one of the funniest things I look back on as a young parent without a role model for parenting, I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't reading any books. I wasn't deciding not to be like my parents. I just winged it every minute of every day. And I had 2 kids in diapers. One couldn't even speak. She was 18 months old, and she really could actually put together a pretty decent sentence. So they come to me and they tell me, she did this, she did that. And I looked at these 2 little tiny critters, and I said to them, I said, this has nothing to do with me. Go up to your room and work it out and come back down when you're happy. I don't know what made me say it. It was pure intuition. I must have gotten hit by guides long before 9/11. Those 2 little guys with their dumpy diapers going up the stairs, they went up and they went in their room. By the time they climbed all those stairs, they forgot why they were mad. They forgot why they asked me to intervene. And they went in the room and played, and then they forgot to come out when they thought the problem was resolved. And that's just what I did with them. This has nothing to do with me. Go work it out. This has nothing to do with me. Go work it out. This has nothing. That's how I felt at the beach last night. You have nothing to do with me. You go work it out. Work it out. I'm going for a swim. You go work that out. You go work that out. You go work that out. I'm going for a swim. And I went for a swim. And there were no sharks. Someone caught me a bluefish like that big.
Wow.
Yeah, like that big. I mean, the thing was enormous. And he never caught a fish before. I walked by and he caught his first fish. And he's like, wow. And he just looked around. He's like, oh my God, you brought me great luck. It's like I've been trying for years. It's funny. Okay. How do we come to a place where we don't need walls and we can respect each other? The answer simply is you just keep being it. That's what you can do. We are beacons of light. And the more we let our light shine, the more other people will become beacons of light. Don't dial down your light. Don't focus on being angry about walls. Focus on all of the wonderful people that are out there doing wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things. Okay? The reason I created Piece It Together is so that we have a place to share good news, good stories, courageous people, meaningful happenings. You know, I have to tell you something that happened last night. I had one night off this week. You think I'm going to talk about being at the beach last night forever? I am, because I had one night off this week. So I was amazed by this. So I walk my 2 miles on the beach, and I swear to you, I felt like I was in a Hallmark movie. There were every pocket of people that I saw was mixed up. Like you would not choose to put those in a group and have that be the expectation. Near where my chair was, there was a group of about 10 people. One was Asian, one was 2, one was 60, 4 were black, 3 were Hispanic. There was a couple of white people in there, 1 white man. It was a collection of people that you would never, ever think between the ages. It didn't seem like anyone was related either. It just looked like these people were together by choice. And then I look over, there's a group of women sitting on the beach. They got their hats on, they got their little children, 2 white and a black. Behind me is a couple, black and white. There's another Asian group that's with whites. And I'm looking at this over and over on the whole beach. It seemed to be like that last night. I swear I was like having ecstasy on the beach last night, drug-free, because the world, at least in my circle, was becoming what we want it to be, which is exactly this: no walls, no separation, no division, none of this. This is all learned. Walls are learned. Walls are taught. We don't really feel like this. We don't feel like this. When we give ourselves permission to just love and to get to know everybody, we get to be, we get to enjoy, we get to experience, you know? You guys know I've been looking for, you know, another place that I might want to live one day. I've been looking for 10 years, and every time I go to a new place, within 24 to 72 hours, I cross it off my list. The places I will live now, they're getting tinier and tinier and tinier and tinier. I've cut whole states out. I've cut whole halves of countries out, because if I can't find something like I saw on the beach last night, I don't want to live there. I just don't want to live there. I don't want to live there. I get to see me in the mirror every day. Why the hell do I want to see that outside of me every day? If I want to see more of this, I'll go look at another mirror, right? That's enough. That's enough. No more white chicks. Sorry. If there's any white chicks out there, sorry. I love you. But you know what I mean, right? So that's it. You just keep being open and friendly and inclusive and open-hearted and ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. I have had many occasions where I hang out with, you know, one of my black friends, and I'm the only white person there. And the first couple of times I did it, it was a little interesting, but I loved the observation of it. It was really, it's very, very cool. And I ask questions, and they give me permission to ask questions. They want me to ask questions because I really do want to know. I can't be black in this lifetime. That's the one thing I cannot do, but I can grow in my understanding of what it's like to live in a black body in this lifetime. What is it like to have had everyone you know get pulled over by a cop for something that white people never got pulled over for? I really do want to know. I want to know what that feels like. I want to know what that looks like. I want to know what your perceptions are. You're allowed to ask questions. Ask questions. It's interesting. And hopefully they'll ask you questions too. It's fun. That's the fun of it. That's the fun of it. That's what we're all here for, is variety. You know, imagine looking at a green screen every day of your life. I mean, a beautiful beach with beach chairs and palm trees. All right, we'll end on this wonderful note. Thank you, everybody, for coming out, and continue to be the wonderful beacons that you are. Thank you.